rolling.
Okay, Nick Hawks with Gristle King here with Gabe, head of operations, and Ariel at Hivemapper. If you don't know who Ariel is, then maybe you should be watching this video. And we're talking about what has happened since the last time I was here in October, November for Fleet Day.
Yep.
What's new? We got a couple MIPs, we got a couple big things going on. Give me the rundown.
All quiet. We haven't done anything since October. Okay, what's happened? A lot's happened. So we launched the mapping network. We're live. I think people are like mapping in like something like 66 countries right now. All 50 states. I think we just hit like South Dakota and North Dakota today. So we got the last two. And DC and Puerto Rico. So yeah, people are mapping all over the world. So that is like, I think the most exciting part is just that like you see the map growing every single day in all these interesting, fascinating kind of ways. Yep. We had all those production issues in the early days. People were rightfully yelling at us about it. Gabe and I were kind of dealing and managing with that. But now we've basically fulfilled all the pre-orders. Okay. So what does that mean? That means if you come to Hivemapper.com, buy a dash cam, the original model, it will ship out within like 48 hours, 72 hours.
It's amazing for crypto.
Yeah.
That's good for a normal company. It's amazing for crypto.
It's good for a normal, exactly, yeah. So
that's big.
yeah, so that's awesome. What we're working now is just trying to get this in distributors' hands. Yep. Such that if you're buying it in Europe or Turkey or wherever in Asia, that it's just going to be at a much lower cost because you're not dealing with all the customs.
Yep.
Like we would look at some of these things, people would buy, be like whatever our price is, and they would marked up like $200 on top of that, and we're like, oh god, that sucks.
Yep.
So that's big. The other big fascinating thing, which I don't think we were fully appreciated or expected, was just the number of people who are actually doing QA.
Okay.
So you can drive, right, which is great. Buy the dash cam, drive around, and then you could also do QA, right? And so I think there's like 8,000 people who are doing QA.
Dang.
Yeah. And so that's pretty exciting as well. And there's going to be more QA tools over time, right? There's a lot of data that's going through the system. The next big focus of ours, and Gabe will talk a little bit more about this in the MIP 2. So MIP is our version, I guess, of the HIP. So Map Improvement Proposal. Yep. So the second one, which has just got released today, which is big, really trying to say is like, look, what's really important from a customer perspective is how do we get regions, region to us is like Los Angeles or Tokyo or Amsterdam. Yep. How do we get these to 100% coverage? Because then you start to like prove to customers that look, it's not just about augmenting your data. Right. We can be the map in that region, right? We can like really. So that's one part, and then doing entire countries, right?
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So like we're not going to start with the United States and doing terms of the 100% of the country, but like smaller countries like Portugal, right, is a good example of that. And we think it's achievable. Based upon what we've seen so far in the network, we think it's very achievable. And then the third thing that the MIP 2 solves is, look, if you looked at the pattern of the Honey token minting schedule, it was pretty conservative. I think it was going to take us like 70 years. It's a long time.
Yep. That's just a good place to start because it gives you room to do what you're doing now, which is expand out the...
Yeah, and so we said, look, like we got to improve this. Like that wasn't the intention, clearly. And so you learn and you adapt. And so the foundation put out the MIP 2, and then working with Gabe, kind of worked with the rest of the community to say, okay, we want your feedback. And the feedback was great, right? Like in the Discord channel, people were like, hey, what about this? What about this question? Yep. The foundation made some adjustments. Gabe kind of helped synthesize some of those adjustments for the community, and then we're rolling it out.
Cool. And then let's see, there's a pretty big thing coming that revolves around the speed of growth of the network and how fast it is compared to a conventional mapping network. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how fast you guys are moving as far as miles mapped or kilometers mapped, or how much?
Go for it, Gabe.
Yeah, so if you look at the trajectory of the mapping on our network, it's growing far more rapidly than any kind of traditional mapping network would be able to deliver. If you think about a company like Google having to buy $500,000 mapping vehicles and put them out on the road, hire the drivers who are driving those vehicles for map collection, it's very capital intensive and it requires a ton of management of personnel to make that happen. In our case, all it is buy a dash cam, drive around with it in your everyday life, and you can be contributing to the network. And so the scalability of this network is orders of magnitude better than what the incumbent industry can achieve.
Yep.
And so when you look at the first 3 months of the Hivemapper network, we mapped 1 million kilometers of the world. And that's incredible.
So how does that compare to like a conventional, to a Google?
We've looked at some of the past, press releases and information out there about like when they hit certain milestones, and I believe we thought it's 5 or 10x faster.
8x faster.
8x faster than a Google was able to achieve the same milestone. And that's a real testament to the power of decentralized networks and these kinds of scalable approaches. And it's a truly exponential growth trajectory, and we're just getting started. I think we don't sit on our laurels about that.
Yeah.
1 million is
Gotta keep
impressive,
going.
but there's 60 million in the world, and when you do those, you have to do them over and over again, every week, every month, to keep that map fresh. So early days still, but the trajectory is incredible, and we're just so jazzed to see how it's going.
That's pretty right how you guys built the community and figured out like, okay, how do we take this thing and do something useful in the real world?
Yeah, I think like that's one area where I think that I'm sure a lot of people like hang out on the Explorer and look at the Explorer in terms of all the metrics. I do at least. It's exciting. It's kind of cool, but that map definitely just communicates coverage more than it communicates freshness, right?
Okay.
And I think what a lot of people are sometimes, especially in the deep end community, are saying like, should I really get involved? Like this looks like it's going to hit coverage, and then is it worth it? It's like once a map has been created, like within days, maybe sometimes hours, it's out of date.
Yep.
And so there's no such thing as like you're done in mapping. Like that doesn't exist.
Right. So there's a long set of tiles to map ahead of you.
Yeah, it's like it'll just keep going.
It
and
is
going,
infinite
going. Yeah,
because it's all the tiles in the world forever.
Yeah, it's like if you think about like construction on the road, right? You think about like a lane, highway, whatever, goes from like 3 lanes to 1 lane. That's changed. We want to know about that, right? There's road debris. We want to know about that, right? The traffic pattern has changed in this specific area for an event, for an issue, whatever it is. We want to know about that, and so it just never changes.
And you guys are allowing folks to start doing that pretty soon, right? If they haven't, or if they're not able to do it already with the Buzz.
Yeah, Buzz is coming hopefully next week.
I hear some buzz about Buzz. So.
Yeah. That's like my little pet project.
Yep.
And I think it's cool because also I think like we didn't fully appreciate that a lot of people actually just hanging out in the app. Like the app is in the foreground for a whole bunch of reasons. And so it's like, okay, like if it's in the foreground and you see stuff, boom, like tell us about it, right? So it is very focused on like, what we don't want people doing is like just tapping Buzz randomly, like you kill the whole point of it, right? So the idea is like, if you see an incident, if you see a problem, or maybe if you see something really interesting, like a rainbow, maybe that's kind of cool as well, right? So that's the idea behind Buzz.
That's super cool. So you're leaning in on kind of what the community can build, and on the technical side, right, we're building a lot of map miles, but also building, like, hey, this is stuff that is interesting to people.
Yeah, and I think once Buzz goes live, it will really hit home for people the power of this network, because we are going to see images and video of things happening in the real world in close to real time in a way that no one else can. There are kind of other things out there in the world. I mean, think of ways, for instance, that are trying to capture things that are happening in the real world. That's just a statistic, a fact. There's no imagery to indicate exactly what happened. If there's a lane closure, okay, maybe there's a lane closure, but what lane and how far does it go? We'll be able to establish those things. And I think once people see this in action, they'll understand the power of having a distributed network mapping the world in real time with real imagery of what's happening in the world.
Love it. Well, you guys have been hard at work for a couple months. I'm super psyched to come back in another 5-6 months and see where it is then.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.